Hey, it's Drybear. Throne and Liberty has just launched globally this week, but there's a ton of mistakes that I'm seeing people make in game, so let's cover a bunch of them so that you can be on track. First, we need to talk about choosing your weapon sets. This is a big point of stress for a lot of people, and I plan to release some other guides going over how to choose your weapons, what combinations work for you, and that sort of thing. But let's talk about the general idea of choosing weapons when you first start out playing Throne and Liberty. The basic idea is that you get to choose between 2 weapons equipped out of the 7 that are available. So you have great sword and shield, daggers, crossbows, longbow, staff, and of course the wand. The big thing that you'll hear a lot of people say, and it's very true, is that when you get towards the end of the game, post level 30, it starts to get harder and harder to switch weapons because you're going to need a lot of weapon mastery in order to stay strong and relevant. So switching weapons once you get to level 50, if you've been leveling the whole time, becomes quite painful. I would say that if you're still within the quality or green upgrade range, it's still fine to mess around with the weapons, but I would encourage you to try and lock down which weapons, at least a primary weapon, that you want to use and use the most, because it does actually impact you quite a lot in the late game. And once you get through all of the freebie materials that they give you in the game, it's going to be more of a time-gated process of doing daily contracts, weekly events, and guild events in order to get the materials you need to properly level up other weapons besides the 1 or 2 that you've chosen. So up until level 30, you're probably free to just choose between weapons. You can hold on to your growth stones and figure out which weapons you want to pick, but I would encourage you to at least think about which weapon that you want to hold on to long term, as it will start getting harder and harder to swap once you go past level 30. Next, let's talk about upgrading weapons and gear. This is a big topic that you'll want to be aware of as well, and something to think about as you move through the leveling process. You can open up your equipment enchanting screen. You'll be able to transfer, level up, or unlock traits for the gear that you have, but it's super important that you plan around which of the growth stones you're going to use and how you're going to use them. And the thing to know here is that you will use equal quality growth stones to increase the level of the gear that you have. You'll notice that when you go to upgrade specific kinds of gear, and you'll see this level go up, the stats on the gear will grow based on the base stats, like the implicit stats. So for our sword and shield, you'll see this is going up to like level 9. We're getting more block chance, we're getting more damage, all of that. Maximum level 9 for blue and purple gear, and 6 for green. Once you have it maxed out, then you can transfer it to the next tier, and this is super important to know about. Because think about it, if you use quality growth stones to level up green gear, and you use rare growth stones to level up blue gear, and you use the precious growth stones to level up purple gear, being able to take a blue piece of gear and transfer that XP from the blue piece of gear to the purple piece of gear is incredibly powerful, because you're using the lower resource to level it up. There is a restriction right now where you cannot upgrade the gray or common level pieces of gear. Those can't be leveled at all. You can level up starting with green, and when you transfer, it's not a one-to-one transfer because there's more XP required for the next tier up. However, it's super useful because you want to take all of the green XP that you had on the green weapon and transfer that XP to the next tier up with blue. The only restriction is that you can only go up to, you can transfer to equal level rarity or +1 rarity. So a green weapon can transfer its XP to a blue weapon can transfer its XP to a purple weapon, and this applies to all purple weapons, whether it's Epic 1 or Epic 2, and the new Epic gear that we get further on in the future as well. So your goal should be to stick with one item through a tier, maximize it, level it up all the way, and then when you're ready to move to the next tier, transfer it. Because when you transfer that item to a new item, it's going to destroy that item and only grant the XP from that item to the new item. You'll lose traits and other values on it. So while you're leveling, make sure you max out each one item at a time and transfer it to the next tier, as you'll be able to carry that progression forward to keep that progress going so you don't lose out and waste growth stones. And also, don't start at a new tier just using the growth stones before. Make sure that the previous tier's quality growth stones end up scaling with you in the current tier that you're in. Next, let's talk about upgrading skills. This is the other side of your progression, and this is going to be one of the more limiting aspects of the game as you progress forward. You will need to level up your skills, the things that you use regularly, in order to get good value out of your character, and you'll notice a massive difference from when you have a skill that's leveled up versus a skill that is not. And on top of that, the skill books, both active active skill and passive skill books start becoming rarer and rarer as you get to end game, and are also time gated in how many that you can get each day and each week. So you really want to plan out how you're leveling up your skills. My recommendation is to pick 1 or 2 skills that you use a lot that scale incredibly well, and get those all the way up to Epic 1 or even higher so that you can get a lot of value out of them. These can be very mainstay, like token skills that you'll use as part of your main weapon. One of the ones that I like a lot is going to be Piercing Strike for Sword and Shield. There's 1 or 2 for every single weapon that is incredibly powerful. And then again, you'll want to level that up until you get to epic quality, to purple quality, and then use that as a scaler. Then as you start locking in your build later game between levels 40 and 50, especially for end game when you're doing the, dimensional circles and hard end game content, or the hard dungeons, the multi-star dungeons, that's when you really want to have a lot of your skills leveled up. But by then, this is when you're going to start noticing that if you wanted to completely shift your weapons, say you're using crossbow and daggers, and all of a sudden you want to use, great sword and shield, going to switch between those when you don't have a lot of skill books available is going to hurt a lot. So I want you to encourage you to be very kind of cautious with how you spend your books leveling up. You don't need to level them. I've been able to level without leveling any skills at all in the beta and in live. You can kind of be very sparse about how you level your skills, but hold on to these and then figure out which ones are going to be the most valuable as you start locking in your playstyle. Additionally, you want to be kind of aware of skill specialization. So you will get skill specialization points as you level up to 100 at level 50. So you'll be able to max that out there. A lot of these specializations are absolutely massive and completely change how an ability works and gives you a lot of bonus power as well. So check these out, especially on the skills that you end up leveling up while you're leveling to make them stronger with the growth books. There's some really big modifications you can make to these to make them crazy strong while you're leveling, and it's super valuable while you're leveling up as well. So pay attention to the specializations. Remember, this is the system that they delayed the launch in order to get this system in because it was that important. Next, let's talk about some leveling tips and some things to avoid, because I see a lot of people missing these aspects as they're leveling up and they have to go back later, or they just end up slowing themselves down quite a lot. The biggest contribution of XP by far is going to be your adventure or your main story quest. This, when you look at your quest book, is the dark purple, and this one will give you ridiculous amounts of XP. So if you're trying to maximize the fastest leveling process from level 1 until 50, your best bet is to make sure that you are strong enough and durable enough to always complete the MSQ adventure quest all the way down to the bottom, and you will very easily get to level 50 by going through that. However, if you're not investing in your character or planning things out properly, you may get stuck at some parts where you can't kill something or a boss is too hard for you, depending on your build. Now on PC, you're able to open your codex by pressing J, I believe. You can come up here inside of this and click this as well on console. So finish out the adventure, but I also want to turn your attention to the exploration area. This is something that you'll do that will really help you jumpstart in the beginning. These are just every region on the map overall. So if you look at the whole map, all of these regions are areas where there could be exploration, and you will be able to unlock the blue quests in those areas, and they do give you a good amount of XP, and they also tend to very easily coincide with the events you're running from the map as well. So specific events in specific areas, the blue quests will usually be in the same area, and also will follow along with the MSQ anyways, so you'll be able to do those at the same exact time, and doing these will keep you leveled up while you go. And lastly, make sure you're doing contracts. So when you get to like level 8 to 10, you'll unlock contracts. You'll be able to start doing these. In every major town, there's going to be a contract manager minus the castle. So you'll be able to come to this guy and talk to him and get these contracts unlocked so you can complete them. You can only have 4 of them at a time, and they give you very good resources that you'll need while leveling up. They also give you weapon mastery points from the training due. You also get some very valuable materials for upgrading your gear, as well as contract tokens that you can use inside of the open dungeons to be able to get even more loot that way as well. But these do give you a fair amount of XP. They give you a fair amount of the Salant, the gold, and also contract coins, which you can use at the contract vendor to unlock things that make you even stronger. So what I normally like to do is once I finish an area, I will let the MSQ, the main story quest, take me to the next area, grab 4 contracts in that new area, and start working on the exploration as I work through the MSQ. And usually by the time you finish the MSQ, you're a little bit over leveled for the next part, and you keep moving on onto each part until you hit level 50. Next, I want to recommend while you're leveling, no matter what build you run, to try and get some max health. This is something that I see a lot of people running, especially if you're leveling with like wand or staff. I see a lot of people doing wisdom or perception, and they end up getting to a point where they're so unbelievably squishy that they end up getting killed by mobs. Mobs are very dense in this game. As you go to questing areas, you'll be surrounded by mobs all the time, and so I recommend putting in at least some points into strength, probably at least up until level 30 while you're leveling, and then when you get to max level, you can reset it and do it. But having that extra HP and damage reduction allows you to pull more flippantly and actually survive, which is a big deal when you're trying to level quickly. And the last leveling tip I'll leave you with that I don't see a lot of people utilizing is the B as in boy key. On console, I'm sure it's just here, return. This one is super useful, and there's actually a little bit of a trick to it as well. So anywhere you are in the world, this doesn't cost you anything. You can press the return key or press B, and it will teleport you to the nearest teleport stone, even if that teleport stone isn't one that you've activated. So if you look on the map, these watchers post waypoints. All of these waypoints are the locations that it will teleport you to. And what you can actually do is if you look on the map, say I didn't have this waypoint, if I made it past the halfway mark here and got to like this part of the area, like right there, that's like closer now to this waypoint than the one I have, it will actually still teleport you to the one you don't have. And it's a way to save time as well. So if you know you're going into a new region, you're looking for a new waypoint, you can get closer to that waypoint, press the return button, and you'll teleport to it. You can activate it, and you're good to go. Next is something that you will wish you did while leveling before, but you may not have on your first initial run through, and that is keeping up or paying attention to trade skilling. As of right now, trade skilling has a nice impact on your late game, and it is something that is more or less time gated depending on what you get. So what I recommend doing is in most cities, go to the sundries vendor while you're leveling and you're not really caring too much about it, and just pay attention to these items that have daily and weekly limits, and just make sure you're unlocking these. So go through, you know, see this, have this bunny, buy all the honey, buy all the rye, buy all the eggs, and then when you get to the point where you actually need to start leveling up cooking or fishing, or you need these weekly limits here, grab these and get these done with so that you'll have it stored up for when you want to do trade skilling, which will make a big difference. You can actually get a lot of value out of cooking as well as fishing in order to keep up your account. The next tip is around storage, as there's a couple things that you may not know when you first start playing. The first one is that you actually can craft from storage. So I recommend going to your storage and actually dumping any crafting materials you have so you can just keep them in storage and keep your inventory clean. Then the next question is around whether you should buy storage space or buy inventory space. But because you can craft from storage, I highly recommend spending your gold or your Salant on upgrading and expanding your storage, since upgrading your inventory is significantly more expensive. So you can very easily just pump up the size of your storage and put all of your crafting materials in there so you can keep your inventory clean. Next up is something that I still paid attention to, and when I got to level 50, I wished I did even more of, and that is paying attention and keeping up with the world events that go on all over the world. If you open your map and you go to timetable, which is the last tab here on your map, you'll be able to see all the events that are going on across the world, and these not only give you great rewards, but they also allow you to finish quests, which means they give you like a double or triple dip in XP and bonus for your account and make your character that much stronger. So you want to pay attention to these timetables and try to participate at least into these co-op events every time they pop up. You'll usually be able to save up the quests, like the exploration quests in certain areas will usually have quests that have you go do that special event in that area, like go to the specific event and do that event. That's all part of that. So that gives you the XP of doing the event. It gives you the rewards of doing the event. It gives you the XP from the quest of doing the event and the rewards from doing the quest of doing the event. So all of that doubles up. And if you plan your time properly, you can very easily get a bunch of value from doing all of that. Additionally, depending on your server, you might be able to sneak into some of the world bosses, especially the peace world bosses that don't have PvP around them. You may not be able to get any rewards, especially if you're not part of a big guild, but you'll still get some nice growth from it and a chance that they reward the smaller rewards that are available, which will allow you to keep your account moving. And again, there also will be quests that will tell you to complete these world events. Next up is dungeons, and this one is a double-edged sword for a lot of reasons. The way I'm going to recommend this, if you're someone that's focusing on exploring the game and enjoying it, then I would just kind of do the dungeons as you come upon them and you're actually able to unlock them and do them. There's going to be some ones that are available while leveling, and what's great about this is it allows you to spend your dimensional contract tokens. I believe believe you have a maximum of 4,500. Yes, you have 4,500 maximum contract tokens for dimensional, and this is what you'll use at the end of the dungeon to get great gear. As you go up, you can start getting more and more soul shards for unlocking better epic equipment, epic drops, and some really great gear, and even some random stuff that might be cosmetic as well. Super valuable to do, but keep in mind that some of these dungeons are pretty brutal and hard to do in a pickup group environment. So my recommendation for dungeons is just when you have dimensional contract tokens and you need the boost, you can do it. But actually, if you're trying to be super efficient, I would just dodge dungeons until endgame, because you don't get as much value out of this. You still get blues, but you can get blues with other methods, or even just doing open world stuff, and you clear that out. Then you can save your dimensional contract tokens for endgame once you get there, depending on how much you have stored up. But if you have 4,500 on the maximum, just go ahead and spend them in the dungeons. And I would also recommend just trying to run these as an over leveled, like try to over level the requirement by like 5 to 10, because a lot of times you will get pugs, especially starting with Roaring Temple and Cave of Desperation, where the pugs struggle really hard to complete the dungeons. Next up is the auction house, and something that I didn't do while leveling, and I really wish that I did, especially now that I'm here and I'm looking at it. So the auction house unlocks at level 40. You won't be able to access the auction house until you hit your character level 40. But one thing I wish I did, and one thing I learned from a mistake I made, is that yes, this is a game that is pay to win, but it also allows for people that are playing free to play to be able to interact with the auction house and sell certain items on it. Sometimes it lags out like this, but you can actually take some items and fully sell them on the auction house for the premium currency Lucent in the game itself. And I wish I held on to more of the tradable items to just sell them on the auction house and get some Lucent for me that I could spend on other things, rather than holding them to myself. Now, the trade system is a little bit more convoluted. You can get what are called extracts, which is like the precursor to an item, and they're usually a little bit less expensive than the full item. If you get a pure item that hasn't been upgraded and has no traits on it, you can actually sell it directly on the auction house, which means if you get a nice drop, you can check to see it. But one thing I'd recommend doing is hold on to your good items, even your materials, lithograph, books, all of that stuff. Hold on to it until you hit level 40, and then offload it all on the auction house, unless you're trying to be like mega cutting edge. You want to get, up to level 50 as fast as humanly possible. You can grab the items unupgraded, you can do the extracts, but you can also grab materials and lithograph books as well, and scrolls. So even the things like your Marins, rubrics, emirates, stalins, you can grab those and hold on to them until level 40. You can sell like really nice cooking materials. This is where if you decide to level up cooking while leveling, you can actually make some cash once you get to level 40. So you can start selling the higher level cooking ingredients that people use for hard content, so on and so forth. So use the auction house more. Lastly, I want to leave you with setting options that are pretty important. The first one is probably going to be the lion's share of the value here. If you go to gameplay and controls all the way down at the bottom, this is something that most players are confused by at first and don't know where it is. And so it's a big limiting factor or a mistake to leave this on. So the way these amatois work, these amatois, these are your pets that you'll summon, and they have a cooldown where they can constantly heal you. And this healing is not free. It requires these World Tree leaves. You can see at the bottom middle of your UI how many World Tree leaves that you have. Every time your pet heals you, it consumes one of those. However, for some crazy reason, the default setting for your auto heal from your pet is like 95%, which means that if you take any amount of damage, your pet starts automatically healing you and consuming all of your World Tree leaves while you're just basically questing and doing normal quests out in the open world without even worrying about whether you're saving it or not. So I recommend in the settings, go gameplay controls, and I bring this down to like 20 to 30%, depending on how much you want to hold on to it. Keep in mind that the heal isn't massive, and if you set this too low, you might end up dying anyways, but it does save you a lot of headache later on, where you realize that like by level 10, you all of a sudden consumed all of the World Tree leaves you got for free because this system was left on. You can also decide whether you want to have it on in PvP combat or not, depending on what you're using it for. Another great option is under gameplay characters, select targets to show skill effects. This is very important, especially if you have a lower end system. But when you get into the massive group battles or you see large guilds going head to head, you might end up having performance issues with the amount of people on screen, or you might just have visibility issues where you just can't see what the heck is going on. So what you can do is with this setting, you can change this from showing every effect and animation on screen to only showing yours, to only showing your party members and yours, or only showing your guild members members and party members and yours. And that way you can reduce the amount of effects or animations that are on screen so you can A, see better, and also B, so your machine might be able to run the game better. You can also add a little bit of improvement here by removing other people's Amatoys, their pets. You can have it set so you just shows yours and doesn't show other people's. But again, when you're in a town like this and it's full of people because the game is popping right now, you have, you know, one for every single person in here. That's a lot of animations, models, textures you're loading in for each one of them. So you can just have your pet show up versus the others that are all around you. Another big adjustment you can do for performance as well, if you go graphics to quality, down here to hair strands, this plus shadows is probably the biggest impact on your performance as well. So if you're struggling with performance, turn off hair strands and also take the shadows and the shaders a little bit further down from quality as well, and you should see a nice improvement from that as well. And those are some tips and tricks, some mistakes that I made or I've seen other people make, and things that would have made my process of leveling easier. If you found value in them, let me know, and also put your tips down below for people that might find some in the comments. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.